We've all faked it until we made it, and created a generic Gmail account under the name Claire, my new assistant. Claire was polite, prompt, and completely made up. I started emailing prospects from Claire's account. She'd say things like, "Hi, this is Claire from Northbridge Creative. I'm reaching out on behalf of our founder, Jack, to see if you'd be interested in a quick discovery call." Response rates doubled overnight. People loved Claire. They were nicer to her than they ever were to me. They wanted to book time with Jack. They respected Jack. Jack was me. Suddenly, I had a pipeline. I was booking calls every week. I'd hop on Zoom, lower my voice half an octave, and play the cool, visionary founder type. I wore button-downs from the thrift store and used words like holistic strategy and market positioning that I barely understood. But I listened. I asked questions. I took notes like my life depended on it, because it kind of did. My first client paid $2,000 for a month of work. I almost cried after that check cleared. Then came the second client. Then the third. I still remember the month I hit $10,000 in revenue. I celebrated by buying a used couch. It was the first piece of real furniture I'd owned since college. But here's where it gets wild. I couldn't keep up. Claire was scheduling too many meetings. Jack had too many projects. I was losing my mind juggling 6 different brand strategies and 3 redesigns, all while pretending to be 2 different people. I'd send a client an email as Claire, then immediately reply to that email as Jack. It was chaos. I once accidentally called myself Claire on a Zoom call. I realized I needed help, but I couldn't afford to hire anyone full-time. So I went back to Fiverr and Upwork and found freelancers, designers, writers. One guy in India who could build landing pages faster than I could write the copy. I paid them well. I treated them like gold. I gave them credit in every deck. Northbridge Creative started to become a real agency. The more we grew, the more I leaned into the founder persona. I even got invited to speak at a small marketing conference. I wore a blazer I borrowed from a friend, showed some client case studies, and talked about the Northbridge approach to brand storytelling. People nodded like I was saying something profound. But the imposter syndrome was brutal. I kept thinking someone would figure out I was just a guy in a shitty apartment with a cat-screaming neighbor and a fake assistant. I almost came clean in a blog post once. I drafted the whole thing. But something stopped me. Maybe pride. Maybe fear. Maybe both. Last year, something changed. A client, a big one, wanted to visit our office. I panicked. There was no office. Just me, my laptop, and a coffee table with 3 missing screws. So I did something crazy. I rented a co-working space for a week. I invited 2 of my best freelancers to join in person. I even printed fake business cards for Claire and put them on a desk with a "Be right back" sticky note. It worked. The client loved it. We landed a 6-figure deal. That money allowed me to actually hire someone. My first full-time employee. Then another. Today, Northbridge Creative has a team of 7 people. Real people. Real salaries. Real benefits. We have a small office in a building that doesn't smell like mildew. Claire, bless her digital soul, has officially retired. We even joked about making her a LinkedIn profile once. We passed $1 million in revenue last quarter. I still think about that version of me 3 years ago. The one with $317 and a Gmail account. I think about the lies I told to build something real. I think about how many times I wanted to give up and how many times I almost did. But the truth is, I don't regret any of it. Sometimes, you don't need a perfect plan. You need a little bit of audacity, a believable assistant, and just enough desperation to keep going when it doesn't make sense. Because eventually, if you keep moving, even a fake agency can become something very, very real. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. I never planned to become an entrepreneur. I was a laid-back software engineer who just wanted to clock in, write code, and disappear into the crowd. My story begins in a freezing Boston winter 4 years ago. I was working at a mid-sized tech company, nothing fancy, just a reliable paycheck, health insurance, and the dull ache of long-term stagnation. The idea hit me not in a moment of brilliance, but in the grim, fluorescent-lit kitchen of my office. I watched a coworker, let's call him Dave, angrily stab at his salad with a plastic fork, cursing because the dressing had leaked all over his keyboard. Again, you'd think someone would have invented a better lunch container by now, he muttered. It was one of those throwaway comments that, for some reason, latched onto my brain like a tick. That night, I started sketching. I wasn't a product designer by any means, but I had an eye for detail. What if there was a modular lunchbox that kept food separated, didn't leak, and could be collapsed to save space? Something sleek. Something that didn't scream, on microwave leftovers in a break room. I started prototyping on weekends. I bought silicone molds, food-grade plastic, and vacuum seals. My girlfriend thought I was losing it. You're seriously spending $300 on rubber gaskets? But it became an obsession. Within 6 months, I had a functioning prototype. I called it the Arkansas. The name was a joke, really. Like Noah's Ark, 2 of everything, safely stored. But it stuck. And the thing actually worked. Vacuum seal, modular compartments, a built-in fork/spoon combo that snapped in like a transformer. People at work started asking where they could buy one. I made 10 by hand, then 20, then 50. I launched a Kickstarter with a modest goal of $10,000. It hit $10K in 12 hours. By the end of the month, we were at $280,000 with over 4,000 backers. Cue panic. I had zero experience with manufacturing, logistics, fulfillment, or customer service. But I'd just become the CEO of a company overnight. My evenings became a blur of supplier emails, YouTube videos on injection molding, and reading horror stories about failed Kickstarters. I outsourced manufacturing to a factory in Shenzhen that promised high quality and quick turnaround. Rookie mistake. The first shipment was garbage, flimsy plastic, seals that didn't hold, warped containers. I cried in my bathtub like a cliché. I had to refund nearly 1,000 orders. Lost around $70,000. My girlfriend left. Said I was married to the Ark now. She wasn't wrong. But I didn't quit. I documented every mistake, every dollar spent, and every lesson learned on a blog I titled, Rebuilding the Arkansas. People appreciated the honesty. Some customers even came back after I refunded them, cheering me on like I was Rocky training for a rematch. I found a new supplier through a friend of a friend. This one actually cared about quality. They even sent a rep to Boston to meet me in person. We worked out a new prototype, and I relaunched with a much smaller goal $50K. We hit $120K. I fulfilled every single order. A year in, I quit my job. I hired a small team, just 3 people at first. A marketing guy, a customer support wizard, and a logistics manager who had previously worked at a gourmet cheese company. Oddly specific, but the guy was a genius. Sales exploded. Not just from Kickstarter backers, but from word of mouth. Instagram moms, Reddit food preppers, and startup bros all loved it. We hit $1 million in sales in 18 months. I remember seeing that number in the Shopify dashboard and just sitting there, in the same office where I started this idea, whispering holy sh_*T to myself. Then came Target. A buyer reached out after someone posted a review on TikTok that went viral. 3.2 million views of someone dramatically opening their Ark lunchbox to reveal a perfectly segmented meal like it was a work of art. They wanted a trial run in 300 stores. I nearly fainted. That kind of shelf space was a dream. We did it. The product moved fast, especially in urban areas. A few months later, they ordered more. But nothing was easy. We had 2 major hiccups, one involving a shipping container stuck in the Suez Canal, yes, that time, and another with a production delay due to a power outage at the factory. I had to come clean to customers again. I offered discounts, free accessories, handwritten notes. It cost us, but the goodwill paid off. Our return customer rate was over 40%. Now it's been 4 years. I'm writing this from a small but beautiful office overlooking the Charles River. We have 19 full-time employees, 2 patents, and partnerships with Whole Foods, REI, and even a co-branded line with a minimalist design company in Sweden. Last year, we did $6.8 million in revenue. I took a salary for the first time in 18 months. And here's the part no one talks about, the loneliness. The anxiety of waking up at 3 a.m. wondering if a mold batch went bad. The friendships that quietly dissolved because you couldn't show up for birthdays or game nights. The parents who still ask, when are you going to get a real job? But I wouldn't trade it for anything. I built something from a frustrated lunch break and a leaky salad dressing. I've shipped over 400,000 units. Every time I see someone on the train open up an ARC, I feel like a proud, slightly exhausted dad. If you're sitting on an idea, sketch it. Talk about it. Build it on weekends. You don't have to quit your job or raise millions. But just start. You might be amazed at what leaks into your life when you stop waiting and start building. Because sometimes the best way to fix a problem is just to pack it better. My name is Chris, and I built a multi-million-dollar business out of pure spite. It started with a frozen burrito. Back in 2017, I was 28, living in a crummy studio apartment in Phoenix, working as a night shift security guard at a corporate office park. It was the kind of job where you have a badge and a clipboard but no real authority. I worked from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. and ate like garbage. My go-to meal was microwave burritos from the gas station next door. One night, I microwaved a burrito and bit into a solid block of ice in the middle. I spat it out and laughed, and then got irrationally mad. I wasn't mad at the burrito, well, maybe a little. I was mad that something as simple as heat food evenly wasn't being done. That was the moment I decided I was done eating garbage. I looked around the break room and saw this ancient vending machine full of sad snacks and overpriced drinks. I thought, why hasn't anyone made a vending machine that doesn't suck? That thought stuck with me. During my downtime on shift, I started sketching ideas for a better vending experience. I didn't know anything about vending machines. I didn't have money. I didn't even have a college degree. But I had time and access to Wi-Fi. I found out that traditional vending machines were operated by a mix of small businesses and big vending operators. The tech in most of them hadn't changed in years. I saw an opportunity, customizable, locally sourced vending machines stocked with fresh, high-quality snacks and meals. My idea was to create a kind of micro-market using smart vending systems. I called it Nomad Bites. I made a simple pitch deck with Google Slides and sent it to anyone I knew with even a tangential connection to tech or startups. Crickets. People said it was too capital-intensive. Others said, it's just vending machines. But I didn't stop. I took a second job delivering pizzas to save up. I worked 90-hour weeks, stashing every dollar. After 18 months, I had $18,000. That was enough to buy a used vending machine from a closing gym, strip it down, and retrofit it with Raspberry Pi components, a touchscreen, and a basic mobile payment system I rigged with help from a guy I met on a Raspberry Pi subreddit. I filled the machine with fresh sandwiches, salads, and protein snacks I made myself in a rented commercial kitchen. I installed it at a local co-working space that agreed to let me test it for free. It bombed. Barely anyone used it. I was crushed. But then one of the tenants from the co-working space, a guy named Jules who ran a boutique design agency, pulled me aside. He said my branding was corporate and sterile and looked like a printer company from 2009. He offered to help redesign my brand identity for free because he liked the idea. We worked nights and weekends and came up with a bold, modern look and a new name, Bite Eats. The next vending machine we installed, at a yoga studio downtown, had 4x the usage of the first one. Then we got into a startup accelerator in Tempe. They gave us $20K in exchange for 5% equity and connected us with real advisors. Within a year, I had 6 machines in different gyms, office spaces, and apartment lobbies. Bite Eats was finally taking off. We reinvested everything into product design and sourcing. I partnered with a local caterer to help make meals, then negotiated a deal with a regional health food distributor. We tracked everything with our own backend, SKU velocity, time of day sales, even individual machine analytics. That's when things got really interesting. Turns out, the data we collected was more valuable than I realized. We knew what people wanted to eat, when, and where. We started experimenting with placement based on foot traffic and demographic heat maps. In 2020, right before the pandemic, we had just signed a deal to put Bite Eats machines in 3 mid-sized airports. Then COVID hit. Every machine went dark. I almost quit. Our runway was down to 3 months. No one wanted to fund a vending startup in a world where no one left their house. Then came the pivot. A friend in med school called me up and said the hospital staff were starving during night shifts. The cafeteria was closed after 8 p.m. I dropped a machine off in the ER lounge myself. Stocked it with fresh sandwiches, fruit, and drinks. It sold out in 24 hours. We emailed 50 hospitals in Arizona and got 11 to say yes. By the end of 2020, we had 48 machines in hospitals and distribution centers. The business became pandemic-proof. We delivered to where the demand existed, not where the foot traffic was. In 2021, a regional healthcare group offered to buy a stake in Bite Eats for $500K. We said no. Instead, we raised a $1.5 million seed round from a VC firm that specialized in smart logistics. With that, we built our own vending hardware, modular, IoT integrated, with temperature control, touchless payments, and facial recognition for loyalty users. We expanded into 6 states. I hired people, a real team, engineers, supply chain managers, even a head of culinary. We built a brand. In 2023, Bite Eats hit $9 million in revenue. I bought my first house, paid off my mom's mortgage, retired my brother from his job at the warehouse and brought him in as director of operations. It all started with a frozen burrito and a really bad mood. Now, every time someone tells me vending is a boring industry, I smile and nod. Because boring problems are often billion-dollar opportunities. You just have to get mad enough to notice them. Oh, and we still have that original vending machine. It sits in our HQ lobby, with a plaque that says, "In loving memory of Chris's last frozen burrito." It still doesn't heat evenly, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I accidentally started a $2.4 million business from a failed date and a used couch. Let me take you back to 2019. I had just been ghosted by someone I was sure was the one. I was sleeping on an air mattress in a shared apartment in Chicago, and I had about $311 in my checking account. I was 27, unemployed, and nursing the wounds of my third failed startup. Tech had burned me out. VC calls were my version of trauma, and I'd sworn off trying to build the next big thing. One night, in a haze of whiskey and self-pity, I decided to go on a Tinder date. I showed up at a bar called Skylark, but she never did. I waited, tried to look cool sipping a $12 old-fashioned I couldn't afford, then walked home, pissed off at everything. On the way back, I saw a ratty couch on the curb. It looked like someone had dropped it off a truck and then parked on it, but the bones were decent. I stood there staring at it. I don't know what compelled me, but I called my roommate. "Dude, help me get this couch into the apartment." We dragged it 6 blocks. The next morning, I cleaned it with everything from Lysol to vinegar to Febreze. I posted it on Facebook Marketplace as a joke. Listed for $150. Sold in 4 hours. That was the first time in months that I'd felt something like control. Like, hey, maybe I'm not completely useless. I found another couch on Craigslist that weekend, ugly but solid, and repeated the process. That one went for $210. The third one I found in an alley, and it sold for $275. That was the moment something clicked. I wasn't flipping couches, I was arbitraging laziness and logistics. Most people don't want to clean, lift, transport, or photograph a used couch. But I did. I had time. I had nothing but time. And I had some weird knack for identifying good bones under bad upholstery. I told my roommate, "I'm starting a couch flipping business." He laughed. I didn't blame him. I still had no job, no car, and my inventory came from curbs and garage sales. I borrowed his Honda Civic and made a logo on Canva called Revive. It looked like a meditation app. I was so proud. By month 3, I was averaging $800 a week profit. That's when I started documenting everything, how fast different colors sold, which neighborhoods dumped nicer furniture, what words worked in listings. Turns out, mid-century modern and cozy sectional had magic powers. I got a van. Then I got another roommate to help clean. Then I got a small storage unit. Revive turned into Revive Home. I hired my first real employee, a guy named Marcus who'd been laid off from a warehouse job. He was stronger than me and way better at logistics. I told him, "We're going to make couch flipping sexy." He didn't believe me, but he showed up. By the end of 2020, we'd done $84,000 in revenue, most of it profit. I reinvested almost all of it into inventory, tools, and a super basic Shopify site that made us look way bigger than we were. And then, a post of ours went viral on TikTok. I wish I could say I planned it, but it was literally a 15-second video of me lifting a love seat while shouting, "This trash couch is going to pay my rent." It blew up. Hundreds of DMs. People asking if we could ship. People asking how to start their own flipping business. The attention gave us a problem, demand. We couldn't just sell local anymore. So I started testing lightweight DIY refurb kits, wood oil, fabric cleaner, new feet, staging pillows. We called it the Revive Kit. It cost me about $18 to assemble, and we sold it for $69. It became our second revenue stream. By 2021, we had 4 employees, 2 Sprinter vans, a 2,400 square foot warehouse, and had crossed $412,000 in revenue. That's when a VC firm actually reached out. I laughed out loud. The same kinds of people who ghosted me in conference rooms were now sending quick sync invites to talk about a potential Series A for a sustainable furniture re-commerce brand. No thanks. Instead, we leaned into courses. I packaged everything I learned about flipping into an ebook and online course called From Curb to Cash. We sold it for $129 and it crushed. People were stuck at home, desperate for side hustles, and we were the scrappy couch weirdos who showed them how. That year, the course and kits made more money than the furniture itself. 2022 was our first $1 million year. I stopped sleeping on air mattresses, bought my mom a car, got health insurance. We had a team of 11. It was surreal. Then came copycats. Lots of them. But weirdly, I wasn't mad. Because we weren't a furniture business anymore. We were an empowerment business with a furniture flavor. People associated us with hope. I never expected that. Today, Revive Home has 23 employees. We're in 3 cities, Chicago, Atlanta, and Denver. We do furniture, yes, but we also teach side hustlers, resellers, even single moms trying to make ends meet. We launched a free mentorship platform called Revive School that matches new flippers with veterans. Last year, we closed with $2.4 million in revenue, profitable. No outside funding. We own everything. All from a couch. From a failed date. Here's the funny part. I ran into the girl who ghosted me 2 years ago. She didn't recognize me. I told her the story. She laughed, then asked if we had any love seats. We didn't, but I gave her one anyway, for free, because that couch changed my life. And honestly, so did she. I started my first real business by accident. At the time, I was working a dead-end customer support job for a tech company that didn't care if I lived or died, as long as I hit my metrics. I was 28, living in a cramped apartment with 2 roommates who were both aspiring DJs, and I felt like a loser every single morning I woke up. The accident came in the form of an old espresso machine my aunt gave me. It was sitting in her garage for who knows how long, and when I visited her one weekend, she just handed it to me and said, "Maybe you can sell this or something." I had never sold anything before besides a few textbooks in college, but I listed the espresso machine on Facebook Marketplace for $150, not thinking much of it. It sold in 20 minutes. A woman drove over from 2 towns away to pick it up. She told me, "These go for like $400 new. I've been looking for a deal for months." I had no idea. I Googled the model. She was right. Something in my brain clicked. I got back online and started looking for other used espresso machines. Found one listed for $90, haggled it down to $70, and sold it a day later for $180. I did it again and again. By month 2, I was flipping 3 or 4 machines a week, making $200 $300 profit on each one. Still working full-time, still dealing with irate customers on the phone, but now I had something else. Something mine. By month 3, I started branching out. Coffee grinders, milk frothers, full espresso setups people bought on impulse, and then dumped on Craigslist a few months later. The margins were decent, the customers were always super into coffee, and therefore easy to talk to, and I was getting better at cleaning, testing, and photographing the machines. I started to feel like an expert. Then one day, I got a message from a guy named Derek. He ran a small cafe supply shop in the city, and he'd noticed that I'd been buying up all the mid-range machines off Craigslist and OfferUp. He thought I was a competitor. I explained I was just flipping them, and he asked if I wanted to partner up. He had space. I had machines. We talked over beers and came up with a deal. I'd source and restore the machines, he'd display them in a corner of his shop, and take a 10% cut for the exposure and space. I moved 10 machines the first week. That's when I quit my job. It was terrifying. My parents thought I'd lost my mind. My boss didn't even look up when I handed in my resignation. But I had savings, a growing customer base, and something I believed in for the first time in years. I turned my tiny bedroom into a workshop. There were parts everywhere, steam wands, portafilters, cracked water tanks. I learned to solder. I watched YouTube videos on fixing solenoid valves, and descaling calcium buildup. Every machine that came in was a puzzle, and every sale felt like a victory. 3 months later, I was making $5K/month in profit. Not bad for something that started as a random hand-me-down. Then came the issue of supply. I was running out of machines to flip. Craigslist was drying up. Marketplace was flooded with flippers like me by now. I needed inventory. That's when I found a local restaurant supplier who was liquidating equipment from cafes that went under during the pandemic. I bought 12 machines in one go for $200. Most of them busted, all of them fixable. I fixed 9 of them and sold them in under 2 weeks. The other 3 became parts donors. But that gave me an idea. Why not go national? I built a website. Nothing fancy, Shopify template, decent photos, copy I wrote at 2 a.m. with a coffee buzz. I called the business Respresso. I offered refurbished machines, cleaned, tested, guaranteed for 60 days. People responded. Orders came in from Portland, Miami, Denver. I packaged each machine by hand, made runs to UPS like clockwork. The next big leap came when I partnered with a YouTube coffee reviewer. I sent him a fully restored Gaggia Classic Pro. He made a 12-minute review that ended with, "Honestly, this is better than the new one." Sales tripled in a week. I hired a part-time assistant, rented a storage unit, took out a business credit card. Scary stuff. But I knew, deep down, that I was building something real. 6 months after launching the site, I got an email from a regional chain of coffee shops. They needed 15 machines for their barista training program. Entry-level semi-autos that could take a beating. I quoted them. They paid in full, and I spent the next 3 weeks doing nothing but working, eating pizza, and fixing machines. Fast forward 18 months. Respresso has a warehouse space for employees and a growing wait list of people who want refurbished machines. We also launched a trade-in program. People send us their old gear, we give them store credit, and we refurbish the machines for resale. But here's the part that gets me the most. I love this work. I love that every machine tells a story, that someone used it to start their morning for years, that I get to bring it back to life, that I'm not just selling things. I'm helping people have better mornings. Some days I still wake up expecting to hear my roommates arguing about whose turn it is to play their SoundCloud mix. But instead, I open my laptop to customer emails, reviews, questions about machines I know like the back of my hand. From a dusty garage gift to a 6-figure business. It sounds like a cliche, but it's mine. I started my first real business from the janitor's closet of a failing gym. It was 2017. I was 27, recently fired from my 3rd sales job in 2 years, and deep into the kind of existential panic that only debt, failure, and the creeping dread of adulthood can bring. I had $2 for 100 to my name, $12,000 in credit card debt, and a Subaru that shook violently if you took it past 55 miles per hour. That same year, I joined a low-rent gym in a dying strip mall just outside Baltimore. It was $19.99/month. The machines were older than me, and the front desk staff almost never showed up on time. But it had one thing I didn't: space. More specifically, a janitor's closet in the back that no one ever used. It had an outlet, a cracked tile floor, and just enough room to set up a desk. And that's where I started my company, an online nutrition coaching service for powerlifters. I called it Macroforge. I had no formal nutrition credentials, no business degree, and no idea how to code. What I had was a notebook full of routines I'd used to help a few friends cut fat before meets, and the drive of someone who had absolutely no plan B. My first client was a guy named Mike, a trucker who trained weekends at the gym. I charged him $50/month for weekly check-ins, macro plans, and tech support. Then came Lisa, a high school teacher who wanted to deadlift 300 pounds by her 40th birthday. Then a guy on Reddit who sent me $35 in Bitcoin and vanished after a week. For the first 6 months, I barely made enough to cover rent. I worked from 6 a.m. to midnight, ate canned tuna for dinner, and slept in the back seat of my car when I couldn't afford gas to drive home. Every week, I told myself I'd quit. Every week, I found one more excuse not to. The tipping point came when I posted a long write-up on a niche powerlifting subreddit about how I helped Lisa cut 15 pounds while increasing her squat by 30. That post blew up. I got 113 DMs in a weekend. I stayed up 38 hours replying to each one. I had something now, a spark. By the end of 2018, I had 110 clients. My system was crude, Google Sheets, email check-ins, PDFs, but it worked. People got results, and word spread. I hired a friend from college, Sarah, to help with client communication. She was the first person I paid besides myself $500/month in free protein bars. Then came the copycats. One of my clients cloned my Google Sheets, slapped their name on it, and started undercutting me. A rival coach wrote a blog post calling me a macro scammer. Someone sent an anonymous tip to the Maryland Board of Dietetics, claiming I was posing as a registered dietitian. I wasn't. I was very clear I wasn't licensed, but it still triggered a 3-month investigation. By mid-2019, I almost gave up. The stress, the 16-hour days, the isolation, it had me spiraling. I broke down one night after a call with a client who accused me of ruining her metabolism because she didn't lose 10 pounds in a month. I hadn't taken a day off in 14 weeks. Then Sarah staged a sort of intervention. "You're not building a business," she told me. "You're building a cage. Either scale or stop." I hated hearing it, but she was right. So I did the scariest thing I've ever done. I gave up control. We rebuilt Macroforge from the ground up. I paid a dev on Upwork $3,000, borrowed on my last credit card, to build a client dashboard. We created scalable templates, hired 2 remote coaches with actual credentials, and launched a waitlist. That move saved everything. By early 2020, we hit 500 active clients. We were profitable. I moved out of the janitor's closet into a real office. I paid off all my credit cards, bought a reliable, but very used, truck, and gave Sarah a 10% equity stake. Then COVID hit. You'd think that would have killed us. But being online first saved our ass. In fact, we tripled our revenue in 2020. People were stuck at home, gaining weight, desperate for structure. We gave them that. We added home workout plans, stress-eating resources, even Zoom check-ins. Our client base exploded to 1,700 people across 9 countries. I hired a CFO, brought on a COO, and watched something surreal happen. My little side hustle became a real company. Now, in 2025, Macroforge is a 22-person remote team generating $4.6 million annually. We've got a mobile app, corporate wellness clients, and a scholarship program for young lifters in underserved communities. We still operate with the same core values I started with: simple systems, real results, and no BS. But here's what I rarely say in press interviews. There were 3 times I almost quit. Once when my debit card got declined buying eggs. Once when my own mother asked when I'd get a real job. And once when a client threatened to sue because she didn't understand how sodium affects water retention. Each time, I stayed because I was more scared of going back to being safe than I was of failing. Entrepreneurship, for me, wasn't about building something big. It was about proving I could build anything at all. That janitor's closet? I took a photo the day I left. There's still a hole in the wall from where I used to prop my laptop up on a broken mop bucket. I keep it as a reminder: you don't need the perfect plan, office, or product. You just need to be too stubborn to quit. And maybe a little crazy. Maybe just enough. I accidentally started $3M/your business because I was angry at my boss. Not proud, just being honest. So here's the full story. It all started in 2019, when I was working at a mid-sized digital marketing agency. I was a senior account manager, good at my job, brought in several high-ticket clients, and consistently outperformed my KPIs. But none of that seemed to matter to my boss. He was one of those old boys club types who thought every win was his doing and every mistake was the fault of his staff. I lasted longer than most, but after getting passed up for a promotion for the 3rd time in 2 years, they gave it to the CEO's nephew who had been there for 6 months. I kind of snapped. I didn't quit right away. I needed a plan, but I also needed to vent. So I started building something on the side, partly out of spite, partly because I believed I could do it better. That something was a SaaS tool for managing influencer campaigns. Nothing groundbreaking at first, just a better interface, clearer metrics, and automation of the repetitive outreach. But I knew the industry. I had worked with over 100 brands trying to run these campaigns manually or using clunky tools. And I knew their pain points inside out. I started working on the tool every evening after work. My co-founder, a college friend who's an engineer, handled the back end while I designed the UI in Figma and handled market research. We called it GlowReach. At first, GlowReach was ugly. Functional, but ugly. We beta tested with 3 small clients I had worked with at my day job. Yes, With their blessing and full transparency, I was still playing it legally safe. They didn't care that it was ugly. They loved that it saved them about 20 hours of work a week. By month 3, we added automated reporting and a campaign matching system that used basic AI to recommend creators based on campaign goals. That was the moment something clicked. Month 6, we got our first paying client. $99/month. Month 7, 5 more. Month 9, I got fired. Turns out, someone from my office saw my LinkedIn update, rookie mistake, about launching GlowReach and snitched. HR called it a conflict of interest, and I was walked out. No severance. My co-founder and I had a 2-hour call that night. I was freaking out, rent, insurance, all of it. But we both agreed. This was the shove we needed. We doubled down. We split roles. He would handle product and support. I'd handle sales and growth. We gave ourselves 6 months. I picked up some freelance consulting to keep the lights on. I cold emailed every brand I'd ever worked with, hunted leads on Twitter and indie hackers, and DM'd marketers on LinkedIn like my life depended on it, because it kind of did. A lot of people ghosted. Some laughed at our pricing. But 1 out of 50 said yes, and that was enough to build momentum. Month 12, we hit $8K MRR. Month 15 $20K. We hired our first part-time support person, then a growth marketer. Our churn was low, people were referring us to their friends, and we were finally stable. Then COVID hit. At first we panicked. Budgets froze. Campaigns were paused. But after about a month, brands realized people were spending all day online. Influencer marketing exploded. Suddenly, we were getting inbound leads. People who'd ghosted me last year were now asking for demos. In 2021, we crossed $1M in ARR. I started waking up without that pit in my stomach for the first time in years. We scaled slowly. No VC. No debt. Just steady reinvestment. We upgraded infrastructure, polished the UI, added integrations with Shopify, TikTok, and Meta. We focused hard on retention and community. In 2022, we launched a managed campaigns service. Bigger brands didn't want to DIY, so we built a small team of campaign strategists who'd run things end-to-end using our own tool. That business unit alone now does $900K/year. Today, GlowReach makes about $3M/year, with 42% net margins. We're still a lean team, 14 people across 7 countries. I still take sales calls. My co-founder still deploys code. We turn down offers from VCs every quarter. We like owning our company. I won't pretend this was some genius move. It started as an emotional response to feeling undervalued. But it taught me 2 things. 1, most good businesses are just solutions to annoying problems. 2, anger can be fuel if you learn how to aim it. To the people who think they need to be ready before starting something, you won't be. Just start small. Start angry if you have to, but start. And if you're wondering what happened to my old boss, 2 years ago, one of his clients, a beauty brand I used to manage, asked for a demo of GlowReach. I gave it. They signed on the same week. They now spend over $30K/year with us. Never underestimate the power of revenge served with a SaaS login screen. I started my first real business by accident. I was 29, living in a 1-bedroom apartment that doubled as my office, gym, and, on occasion, my existential crisis headquarters. I had bounced around from job to job, sales, bartending, customer service, freelance writing, you name it. I had 0 savings, a maxed-out credit card, and a deeply intimate understanding of ramen flavors. The thing was, I had a good idea. Or, at least, I thought I did. It started with a fridge magnet. Not just any magnet, though. My roommate at the time, Dean, was an artist. Like, the starving kind. He made these funny, cynical little cartoons about office life. One of them showed a stapler holding a sign that said, unstapled and unstable. I laughed way too hard and said, you should put that on a magnet. He did. We sold 5 of them to friends within the week. It wasn't much, but it stuck with me. That night, I stayed up sketching business ideas, which I was known to do whenever I felt particularly delusional. But something about the magnet thing kept tugging at me. So, I did what every impulsive, underqualified future entrepreneur does. I created a Shopify store called Fridge Fails and spent $312 that I did not have on a batch of 250 magnets from a wholesaler I found in Ohio. They were terrible quality. The print was blurry, the colors were off, and worst of all, they curved. Imagine trying to slap a wobbly magnet onto your fridge like it owed you money. But I was determined. I made a cheesy Instagram account, posted memes, and shared Dean's original artwork. One of them, a cartoon of a coffee mug yelling, "Stop refilling me with regret," went mildly viral on Pinterest. We sold 80 magnets in 3 days. Cue panic. People actually wanted these. I reinvested the little money we made, this time finding a better supplier, one who understood the radical concept of flat magnets. I added 5 more designs, and Dean and I started brainstorming constantly. We weren't just making magnets anymore. We were building a weird little brand centered around the petty drama of inanimate office supplies. By month 4, we'd cleared $4,200 in revenue, mostly from Instagram traffic and a few shout-outs on humor blogs. It was exciting, but also terrifying. I quit my side gig as a Lyft driver to focus full-time on fridge fails. My parents were not thrilled. "You gave up a job with benefits to sell magnets?" Yes. Yes, I did. It got real when Office Depot emailed us. They wanted to carry a small run of our magnets in select stores as part of a quirky desk accessories campaign. I nearly passed out. I spent the next 72 hours researching wholesale agreements, barcodes, UPCs, shipping logistics, and how not to sound like a complete amateur on a Zoom call. We delivered. Barely. The day our first wholesale order shipped, I slept for 16 hours straight. With some traction behind us, we launched a Kickstarter to fund our next idea, Desk Drama, a series of tiny comic books about the fictional lives of office supplies, bundled with a matching magnet and sticker set. We needed $10,000. We hit that in 4 days. That Kickstarter ended at $37,000. Suddenly, we had actual customers, real deadlines, and a ton of pressure. Dean officially joined as co-founder, and I hired my cousin to handle customer service. We worked 12-hour days, designing, printing, packaging, and shipping from our living room turned distribution center. We even negotiated a deal with a small chain of bookstores in Canada. Everything was going great until it wasn't. Our third product line bombed hard. We tried to do a more professional set aimed at actual office decor, minimalist quotes, clean typography, stuff like "Stay Focused" and "Inbox Zero Hero." It flopped. Our existing audience didn't care for it, and the new audience we tried to reach had no idea who we were. That failure cost us almost $6,000 in inventory we couldn't move. It was a gut punch. I doubted everything. Maybe we were just a novelty joke, a fluke, something that should have stayed a meme. Dean and I fought a lot during those months about the direction, the tone, the money. I almost walked away. But then we got an email from a customer named Shelley. She said she was a middle school teacher and had been using our magnets as rewards for her students. One of them, a quiet kid who barely spoke in class, apparently loved the anxious paperclip magnet so much that he started opening up more. She just wanted to thank us. That email was the reset button I didn't know I needed. We went back to what made us unique, funny, relatable content about being human, disguised as jokes about office supplies. We launched a line called Classroom Chaos, designed for teachers, students, and overworked school staff. It was our biggest hit yet. Fast forward to now, Fridge Fails is a 6-figure business. We've got 3 part-time employees, a fulfillment center, and a loyal, weirdly passionate customer base. We've shipped over 40,000 units to 12 countries. And no, I still don't have a proper office. I work from a tiny corner of my apartment that now has more magnets than furniture. Looking back, I realize I didn't build a business around magnets. I built it around emotion. Around the idea that even a grumpy stapler or a sarcastic sticky note could make someone smile on a rough day. And somehow, people paid for that. The lesson? Your idea doesn't have to be world-changing. It just has to be real. You don't need $1 million pitch deck or a fancy MBA. You just need to notice the little spark that makes people laugh, think, or feel seen, and be crazy enough to bet on it. Even if that spark is printed on a wonky refrigerator magnet. Hey, friends. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I never planned to become an entrepreneur. Honestly, I stumbled into it. It all started 3 years ago when I was 29, broke, unemployed, and sleeping on a futon in my sister's guest room in Tacoma, Washington. I had a marketing degree, 6 years of job hopping behind me, and absolutely nothing to show for it. but a mountain of student debt and a resume full of helped increase engagement bullet points that didn't impress anyone. It was the pandemic that set things in motion. I got laid off from a small marketing agency when budgets were slashed across the board. Nobody was hiring. I spent 3 months applying to hundreds of jobs and getting ghosted or rejected. One night, while aimlessly scrolling through Instagram, I came across a sponsored post from a company selling artisanal hot sauce with a sleek label and $14 price tag. I clicked out of boredom. Their story was basic. Some guy made hot sauce in his kitchen, posted about it. It went viral, and now he was in Whole Foods. I didn't care about hot sauce, but something clicked in my brain. What if I did that? What if I picked something, built a brand around it, and just went for it? After a week of obsessing over different ideas, beard oil, cold brew kits, plant care boxes, I remembered something weirdly specific. My late grandfather, who lived in rural Oregon, used to make this pine resin balm. It smelled like a forest, looked like wax, and he swore it could fix anything: cracked skin, cuts, dry lips, even insect bites. He made it from pine pitch, beeswax, and olive oil. It was amazing, but it never occurred to me to do anything with it. I Googled pine resin balm. Barely any search volume. A few Etsy listings. One low-quality YouTube tutorial. No major players. I had nothing to lose. I ordered pine resin and beeswax from a hobby shop and started melting stuff on my sister's stove at 1 a.m. It smelled like Christmas and felt like something ancient. The texture was all wrong, but I was hooked. I spent 2 months perfecting the formula. I ordered tins and tiny labels, designed a logo in Canva, and came up with a name: Ridge and Root. Outdoorsy, earthy, minimal. The kind of brand I thought REI might carry one day. I set up a Shopify store, an Instagram page, and launched with 100 tins. I had no audience, so I gave 30 to friends and family, sent 20 to outdoorsy micro-influencers, and sold the rest through a Reddit post on r/BuyItForLife where I explained the product's origins. That post got me 58 sales in one weekend. Then nothing. For the next 3 months, I barely broke 5 sales a week. I posted on Instagram every day. I messaged influencers. I cold emailed outdoors bloggers. Crickets. I almost quit, but then I had one breakthrough. A guy with a decent YouTube following, around 80K subs, who reviewed gear for thru hikers agreed to try it out. He made a 9-minute video where he called it a miracle salve that he used for cracked heels on a 14-day trek. Sales exploded. I sold out in 2 days. That was my turning point. I started reaching out to more hiking and bushcraft creators. I offered free tins, no strings attached. Some ignored me, some responded months later, but a handful loved it and raved about it. My monthly sales grew from $400 to $5,000, then $12,000. I reinvested everything. I moved out of my sister's house and into a studio apartment where I converted the entire kitchen into a resin balm factory. My big break came from a random email. A buyer from a chain of boutique outdoor stores in Colorado had heard about the balm through her brother, who watched one of the YouTube reviews. She wanted to try it in 12 stores. I freaked out. I wasn't ready for wholesale. I didn't even have barcodes. But I said yes. I spent the next 2 weeks figuring out wholesale margins, UPCs, case packs, and shelf displays. I hand-poured 2,000 tins in 10 days. I shipped them all myself and crossed my fingers. The balm sold out in those stores in 3 weeks. That was the moment I knew I had something real. I incorporated. I hired a fulfillment company. I contracted with a small cosmetics manufacturer in Oregon who agreed to produce my formula at scale. I stopped making balm in my kitchen and started thinking like a business owner. In year 2, Ridge and Root cleared $420,000 in revenue. I launched 2 new products, Trail Balm with lavender and a pine tar soap bar. Both did well, but the original pine resin balm was still the hero. I got into 60 stores, hired a part-time assistant, and finally paid off my student loans. But not everything was smooth. A competitor popped up with an eerily similar brand, forest theme, rustic labels, and even the same tin shape. They had better photos, more money, and started outranking me on Google Ads. For a while, my sales dipped. I panicked and made the mistake of trying to outspend them in paid ads. I burned $20K in 2 months and barely saw a return. What saved me was returning to my roots, content. I partnered with a videographer and created a short film-style ad about the origin of ridge and root, complete with footage of Oregon forests, vintage clips of my grandfather, and behind-the-scenes shots of resin harvesting. It was raw, emotional, and real. We ran it on Instagram and YouTube. It hit 500K views in a month, and my email list doubled. The other brand faded. I later found out it was a drop-shipping operation sourcing bomb from Alibaba. By year 3, we hit $1.1 M in revenue. We launched an REI's regional program in the Pacific Northwest and sold out in under 6 weeks. We're now talking about a national rollout next spring. I've hired 4 full-time employees, and we just signed a lease for a 2,000-square-foot production and fulfillment space in Bend, Oregon. Sometimes I still feel like the guy who used to stir pine sap on his sister's stove at midnight, wondering if any of this would work. I didn't raise money. I didn't go viral on TikTok. I didn't have a grand vision. I just made a product I believed in, told its story, and never stopped finding new ways to share it. If you're thinking of starting something, especially if you're broke, lost, or stuck, pick one thing. Something real. Something simple. Make it better than anyone else. And start. In 2016, I quit my job, lied to my family, and risked everything I had to start a gourmet grilled cheese food truck in Minneapolis. I had no culinary training, no business degree, and no real plan beyond a notebook full of ideas scribbled down during long lunch breaks at my corporate desk job. What I did have was a grudge, a burnt-out soul, and a hunger for something real. It started the day my boss, Rick, told me I was being passed over for a promotion I had basically bled for. Instead, it went to a guy named Chad who showed up late, copied my spreadsheets, and once asked me what ROI stood for in a meeting. Rick looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're doing great work, but Chad just fits the culture better." That was the day I mentally checked out. That weekend, I bought a $14 panini press off Craigslist and made sandwiches until 3 a.m. every night for a week straight. Why grilled cheese? Because everyone loves grilled cheese. It's nostalgia and comfort and simplicity all in one bite. But I wasn't interested in Kraft singles and Wonder Bread. I was testing combos with fig jam, truffle oil, slow-cooked pork belly, sourdough fermented for 48 hours. My girlfriend at the time called it a quarter-life crisis. She wasn't wrong, but she also left me a month later, so screw it. I sold my car and bought a rusted-out 1987 Chevy P30 step van for $7,000. It barely ran, smelled like mothballs and old onions, and had a cracked windshield held together by duct tape. I named it Melted. I spent 3 months fixing it up in my brother's garage with help from YouTube and a very patient local mechanic who agreed to trade labor for a month's supply of sandwiches once I got running. I told my parents I got a remote gig doing tech consulting. They were proud. I was lying. I didn't want the judgment, the worry, the inevitable, "Why would you leave a stable job with health insurance?" lecture. I had $12,800 in savings, no income, and a dream of becoming the grilled cheese king of the Midwest. My first event was a summer beer fest. I parked Melted behind a tent, plugged into a generator, and cranked out 200 sandwiches in 6 hours. I made $1 for 40. I cried in the truck when it was over. It was the first time in years I'd felt like I did something that mattered. But it wasn't all romantic. My third weekend, the transmission gave out 2 hours before a lunch rush. I had to call a mobile mechanic and pay $700 on the spot or lose the gig. Another time, the health inspector showed up unannounced and cited me for having my cutting boards too close to the raw meat drawer, completely my fault. I had to shut down for 3 days and take a food safety course. I was learning everything the hard way. Summer turned into fall. Business was steady but slow. I started catering events, weddings, birthday parties, brewery nights. I made deals with local bakeries and cheese shops, promising exposure and tag backs in exchange for discounted goods. I got good at marketing on Instagram, posting using cheese pulls, behind-the-scenes clips, even starting a series called What's Melting Today? I gained 3,000 followers in 4 months. Then came the turning point. A local food blogger with 80K followers stumbled on Melted while drunk after a concert. She ordered the Pig Newton prosciutto, fig jam, brie, and rosemary butter, called it a religious experience, and posted a glowing review with a mouth-watering pic. It went viral. That weekend, I had a line that wrapped around the block for 3 hours straight. I sold out of bread both days. I made $800 that weekend alone. People were driving in from 3 cities over just to get a sandwich. With the momentum, I took out a small business loan, hired my first 2 employees, one of whom, ironically, used to be a line cook at the corporate cafeteria I used to eat at, and wrapped the truck with a proper logo and branding. I reinvested every cent I made. No vacations, no luxuries, just better equipment, faster service, more reach. By the end of year 2, I had 2 trucks, a pop-up stall at the farmer's market, and a deal with a local brewery for permanent weekend placement. My revenue cracked $200,000. That was the same year my parents found out what I was really doing. My dad laughed for a solid 2 minutes before saying, "Well, at least it's not drugs." Year 3, I got a call from a regional food TV show. They wanted to feature Melted in a segment on Midwestern street food. I agreed and played it cool, but when the host took a bite of my jalapeno popper melt and said, "That's the best damn sandwich I've had all year," I had to turn away so they wouldn't see me tearing up on camera. Not everything went up and to the right. I dealt with a break-in, where someone stole my generator and half my dry goods. Insurance barely covered it. One of my trucks got sideswiped on the freeway and was out for repairs for a month. COVID almost wrecked us, but I pivoted fast, offering delivery kits, meal prep boxes, and doing virtual grilled cheese cook-alongs. That alone probably saved my business. Today, Melted is a 6-truck operation spanning 3 states. We employ 22 people, including 2 formerly incarcerated folks who've become our most loyal and dependable staff. We partner with local farms. We pay above industry average. And this year, we opened our first brick-and-mortar spot in Northeast Minneapolis. It's a cozy little place with exposed brick, a vinyl record player, and a sign over the counter that says "Stay Cheesy." I still work the truck sometimes. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because nothing beats handing someone a hot, crispy, gooey sandwich and watching them take that first bite with the kind of smile that tells you, just for a second, life isn't so bad. I didn't do it for the money. I did it to feel alive again. And I still remember that first sandwich. Pepper jack, caramelized onion, Texas toast. I called it the Rick, and it was served extra toasted. I started my first real business by accident. It wasn't a childhood lemonade stand, or flipping sneakers in high school, or even dropshipping like every third person on YouTube. I was 32, unemployed, and staring down the barrel of eviction in a Chicago winter. 2 years ago, I was a mid-level marketing manager at a mid-sized tech company. The kind that sells SaaS to other companies and throws around terms like data-driven agility while giving out ping-pong tables. I was good at my job, but not indispensable. When they got acquired, half the staff was gone in a week. I was part of that half. I thought I'd bounce back quickly. I had a solid resume, good recommendations, a decent LinkedIn network. But the job market was brutal. I went on interview after interview, sometimes getting to the final round, only to be ghosted or rejected. Meanwhile, rent didn't care that my career was taking a sabbatical. With my savings dried up, I took freelance gigs doing copywriting and marketing strategy. But it wasn't enough. One day, desperate to make rent, I looked around my apartment and realized I had dozens of random vintage items I'd collected from thrift stores over the years. Old cameras, weird Soviet pins, some mid-century modern lamps. I'd always told myself I liked collecting, but in truth, I was hoarding cool junk. On a whim, I took pictures of the 3 least sentimental items and listed them on Etsy. One sold within 24 hours for 3 times what I paid. The other 2 sold by the end of the week. That's when it clicked. I took the $150 I made and hit a few local thrift shops. With a marketer's eye and a collector's obsession, I started building an inventory. I wasn't just flipping. I was curating. I gave everything a story. A 1970s orange rotary phone became a Cold War-era conversation starter. A cracked leather suitcase became the perfect prop for indie filmmakers and steampunk cosplayers. It sounds ridiculous, but the listings stood out. Within 2 months, I was averaging $1,500 a week in sales. I reinvested nearly everything, going to estate sales, auctions, even befriending a few old antique dealers who thought I was some millennial trying to relive the 70s. I called the shop Rust and Echo. I had zero plans to build a business. I was just surviving. But then something strange happened. I started getting repeat customers. People messaged me asking if I could find more mid-century lamps, or if I had more Cold War memorabilia. I began keeping a spreadsheet of customer requests. I needed help. So I called my friend Tara, a photographer who was also out of work, and asked if she wanted to shoot product photos for 15% of net sales. She said yes. I upgraded the photos, standardized the listings, and suddenly sales jumped again. By the end of year one, Rust and Echo grossed $187,000, netting me just over $60,000 after expenses. Still less than my corporate job, but I had freedom, flexibility, and a feeling I'd never had in a cubicle: ownership. Then, the real growth started. One night, I was deep in an auction site and came across a lot of 500 vintage postcards from the 40s to the 70s. I bought it for $200. When it arrived, I sorted them by era, theme, and aesthetic: classic cars, Americana, retro futurism, kitsch humor. I listed them in packs of 10 for $15 each. They sold out in 4 days. That changed everything. I realized I could systematize vintage. It didn't have to be one-off listings. I started building themed collections: Atomic Age kitchen decor, Cold War memorabilia starter kit, Mad Men office aesthetic. I was selling more than stuff. I was selling nostalgia, identity, and aesthetic in a box. I hired a part-time assistant to help with shipping and inventory. I rented a small studio space, which doubled as a warehouse and photo studio. Then, I got lucky. A TikToker with 500K followers ordered one of my retro road trip packs. She made an unboxing video that got over 1 million views. Overnight, my Etsy messages exploded. I had to temporarily shut down the shop just to keep up. With that momentum, I decided to build a standalone e-commerce site. I hired a freelance dev from Upwork, spent $3,000, and launched rustandeco.com with better branding, faster checkout, and a bill and email list. I leaned into content marketing, blog posts about retro design trends, newsletters that felt more like zines, and Instagram reels showing a day in the life of a modern-day treasure hunter. My email list grew to 10K in 6 months. Conversion rates were solid. My repeat customer rate was over 30%. That's when the wholesalers came knocking. Turns out, some boutique hotels and themed cafes wanted to buy vintage in bulk to decorate their spaces. One hotel in Austin ordered 150 retro alarm clocks. Another in Portland bought 300 vintage diner mugs. I created a separate B2B arm of the site and hired Tara full-time to run creative. In year 3, we grossed just under $600,000. I paid myself $90,000 and gave my 2 employees profit-sharing bonuses. Not life-changing money, but I went from near eviction to running a sustainable, growing brand built on literal trash. It hasn't all been vintage rainbows. A few months ago, an Instagram influencer we paid $2,000 to do a collab ghosted us. Another time, USPS lost a $1,200 bulk shipment, and I had to eat the cost. But compared to the fragility of corporate life, I'll take the chaos of entrepreneurship any day. Looking back, I realized that what saved me wasn't just selling cool stuff. It was storytelling, iteration, and community. I didn't build Rust and Echo with a 5-year business plan or investor pitch deck. I built it by listening, really listening to what people missed, what they loved, what they felt nostalgic for. Now, we're exploring a physical storefront, a hybrid retail and photo space where people can shop, shoot, and hang out. Maybe even host a zine-making workshop or a vintage swap night. I don't know where it goes next, but I'm no longer just surviving. I'm building something weird and wonderful, and it all started because I couldn't pay rent. I was 33, broke, recently divorced, and living in a studio apartment above a laundromat that smelled permanently like wet socks and burned detergent. My ex-wife got the house, the dog, and even the good friends in the split. I had a microwave, a futon, and the unbearable realization that I'd spent the last 10 years working a job I hated in tech sales, just to end up here. What I did still have, though, was my knack for finding weird ways to make money. I've always had a talent for sniffing out what people wanted before they knew they wanted it. In college, I scalped textbooks and sold rare Pokemon cards on eBay before it became a trend again. At one point, I ran a side hustle reselling discontinued makeup products. But I gave all that up when I got serious and got married. Now serious was out the window, and I needed a way to climb back up. One night, while eating gas station sushi, don't judge, I got the idea. A friend of mine had posted on Instagram about paying someone to clean and organize his Airbnb after a party went out of control. I remember doing the same for my friend Jamie once for $50 and a burrito. But Jamie had 3 more listings now and always complained about how unreliable cleaning services were. So I texted him, "What if I handled your Airbnbs for a cut of the profits?" He thought I meant managing them entirely, and I didn't correct him. I had no idea how to manage short-term rentals. But I figured, how hard could it be? Turns out, it's incredibly hard. The next weekend, I was up at 5 a.m. unclogging a toilet using a coat hanger at one of Jamie's downtown listings. That afternoon, I was explaining to a German couple that no, we couldn't allow indoor grilling. And yes, the smoke alarm was loud for a reason. But within 3 weeks, all 3 of his properties were getting 5-star reviews. I created a checklist system, trained a couple of local college students to clean with military precision, and handled all guest communications using a script I refined each week. Word spread fast. A couple more property owners reached out. Then a few more. I named the business BM Bright and threw together a website with a $20 template. I still didn't have a real office. I worked out of the laundromat lobby at night because it had decent Wi-Fi. My first big win came when a local real estate investor asked if I could manage 10 new units he was opening in the arts district. I said absolutely, then spent the entire night Googling how to scale a short-term rental management company. I hired my first full-time cleaner that week, then a second, then someone to handle laundry. We partnered with a local dry cleaning service that agreed to handle our linens in exchange for free advertising in every unit. That one deal saved us thousands. But things started to wobble around month 6. I had 32 units under management and was working 16-hour days. A guest slipped in a shower where the anti-slip mat had been removed by another guest. We got threatened with a lawsuit. One of my new hires quit and stole a set of master keys. I nearly shut it all down. My stress levels were insane. I gained weight. My hair thinned. I drank too much boxed wine and argued with my microwave. Then I remembered what Jamie had said early on. Everyone in this business thinks it's about properties. It's about people. So I stopped thinking like a janitor and started thinking like a CEO. I brought on a co-founder, my childhood friend Alicia, who had an operations background and was 10 times more organized than I'd ever be. We made tough decisions. We started charging clients a management fee instead of taking a percentage. We invested in better insurance and keyless entry systems. By year 2, we were managing 75 units and had 4 full-time employees. I paid off my credit card debt, got a decent car, moved into a small loft that didn't smell like despair. Then came our lucky break. A TikToker stayed at one of our listings and did a walkthrough video praising the cleanliness, the welcome snacks, and the super responsive team. The video went viral. I woke up to 12 voicemails from property owners across 3 states asking if we managed out-of-town listings. Alicia and I spent a week putting together an expansion plan. We trained remote teams using Zoom and a slick little onboarding portal we hacked together using Notion. We launched in Austin and Denver within 3 months, and Los Angeles 6 months after that. Today, just under 3.5 years since that gas station sushi night, we manage 412 listings across 6 cities. We're profitable, bootstrapped, and just passed $5 million in revenue last year. I still don't have an MBA, and I still do most of my thinking in the shower, but I've built something that feels real and resilient. Entrepreneurship, I've learned, isn't just about the grind or the hustle. It's about finding a way to solve a pain point so well that people tell their friends about you. And it's about knowing when to step back, bring in smarter people, and let go of your ego. I don't miss my old life. I don't even miss the dog. Okay, maybe a little. But there's something freeing about hitting rock bottom and realizing you have nothing left to lose. That's when you get creative. That's when you get bold. That's when you build something worth talking about. I never planned to be an entrepreneur. I was the kind of person who played it safe, followed the rules, checked the boxes, made the predictable choices. College, corporate job, a few promotions, a stable paycheck. That was me. Until a printer broke in the office kitchen. That's not a metaphor. It was a literal printer. Some outdated all-in-one HP monstrosity that had been jamming for weeks. We'd been begging IT to replace it, and finally, on a Friday afternoon, it gave out with a terrible grinding noise and a puff of smoke. My manager, Jeremy, made a show of being annoyed, but he was already halfway out the door. "Just submit a help ticket," he said, waving me off. I stared at that broken printer, frustrated out of my mind. Not just because it was broken, but because this job, my whole career, was starting to feel the same way. Jammed, overheating, not worth fixing. I was 31. I had no real savings, no major achievements I could point to. I was just dependable, average, replaceable. That weekend, I couldn't stop thinking about how annoying printers were. All the lost hours, the jam trays, The overpriced ink. I went down a rabbit hole of research, half out of boredom, half out of spite. I found forums of office admins swapping horror stories about printer repairs, hidden fees from service contracts, how much money businesses wasted each year on managed print services. Then I stumbled across something unexpected. A few small companies were ditching physical printers entirely and shifting to secure digital document systems that mimicked the workflow of printing and scanning, but in the cloud. I wasn't in IT, but I could understand the basics, and what I read excited me. That was the beginning of what would eventually become my company, VaporCopy. It started as a side hustle. I cobbled together some open-source tools and basic cloud storage to create an internal demo, a sort of fake print process that let you print to a secure cloud, edit or sign digitally, and then share or archive it. No hardware, no drivers, no ink. My first client was a friend of mine who ran a tax prep firm. I showed her how she could scan, sign, and send documents to clients without using her ancient brother machine. She loved it and offered to pay me to set it up for her team. I charged her $500. I couldn't believe someone paid me to do something that didn't exist a few weeks ago. From there, I started picking up local clients, accountants, law offices, HR departments. I wasn't selling a product. I was solving a problem that was slowly driving them insane. The turning point came when I pitched a mid-sized real estate firm on a customized version of the system. They had 40 agents and were burning through toner like it was gasoline. I offered to build them a branded document portal where clients could print, review, and sign paperwork digitally. They said yes, and paid me $12,000 upfront. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, staring at the contract. It hit me. I had just made more in a week than I usually did in 2 months at my job. I put in my notice on a Monday morning. Jeremy didn't even ask why. I guess I wasn't as indispensable as I'd hoped. The first year on my own was a mix of chaos and caffeine. I worked 14-hour days, rebuilt the back end 3 times, and made enough dumb mistakes to fill a book. But I also learned. I learned how to talk to clients, how to say no, how to price things based on value instead of time, how to hire and fire, how to let someone smarter than me take the wheel when I was clearly out of my depth. I didn't take on investors. I bootstrapped everything. I made deals with small IT firms to bundle my service into their offerings. I signed a white-label contract with a document security company. I even wrote a guest article in a niche industry blog that accidentally went viral in the HR world. By year 3, I had 5 employees and revenue approaching $500,000. I took a salary that still felt weird in my bank account. I paid off my student loans. I bought my mom a used SUV to replace her dying Corolla. I took a weekend trip to New Orleans just because I could. Then COVID hit. It should have killed the business. Offices closed. Budgets got slashed. But something weird happened. All the companies that had been dragging their feet about going paperless suddenly needed exactly what we offered. We had our best quarter ever. By 2022, we were being approached by VCs. I still didn't take their money. I had no plans of turning VaporCopy into a unicorn. I liked it lean. But I did hire a CTO, a real one, and built out a proper dev team. We launched a mobile app. We introduced integrations with DocuSign, Google Workspace, and Microsoft 365. I was 38 when we hit $3 million in annual revenue. I still remember the broken printer that started it all. I ended up buying a nearly identical model from eBay and keeping it in our office lobby, inside a clear case, with a brass plaque, "The Last Jam." Entrepreneurship didn't make me a billionaire. I didn't IPO. I didn't get interviewed by Forbes. But I built something real, something people need, and I changed my life doing it. Sometimes I think about the alternate version of me, the one who stayed at the job, fixed the printer, waited for retirement. He probably still gets lunch from the same food truck and thinks about quitting every other week. But I don't. I get up every morning knowing I broke out of the jam. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just wanted to not hate Mondays. Back in 2017, I was working as an assistant marketing manager for a mid-sized tech company in Denver. The job was stable, the pay was decent, and the office fridge always had LaCroix. But every Sunday night felt like a funeral. I'd get anxious, irritable, and would start fantasizing about car accidents, not fatal ones, just enough to land me in the hospital for a week or 2. Anything to skip work. I had a side hustle at the time that I barely acknowledged. It was a simple Shopify store that sold customized planners and journals. I called it MindTrack. I used a dropshipping model with a supplier in Ohio, and most of the designs were templates I bought and slightly modified on Canva. It made me about $400 a month, just enough to cover my weekend bar tabs and a few bills. Then one day, everything changed in the dumbest possible way. I accidentally went viral. It started with a tweet. I posted a picture of a custom-designed, anti-procrastination journal I had printed for myself. I captioned it, "This thing bullied me into finishing a 10-page report in one sitting. 10 tenths do recommend." A friend with about 50K followers retweeted it, and within 48 hours, I had over 3,000 orders. My site crashed. My supplier called me in a panic. I thought I was going to die of stress. But I pulled 3 consecutive all-nighters, hired 2 college students to help me fulfill orders, and somehow, we got through it. In the following month, I made $38,000 in profit. That was more than my annual salary. So I did the irrational thing. I quit my job. I didn't even have a plan. I walked into my boss's office and told him I was starting my own productivity brand. He raised an eyebrow and said, "You sure?" I wasn't, but I nodded. "Well," he shrugged, "you were too smart to stay here anyway." What followed was 2 years of pure chaos. Year 1. I moved into a friend's basement to save on rent and poured everything into scaling Mindtrack. I learned Google Ads, Facebook ads, email marketing, supply chain management, customer service, and basic accounting, all from YouTube and trial and error. I got burned by a supplier in China who ghosted me after taking $12,000. My first VA quit with no notice during Black Friday. I had a panic attack in a Staples aisle because they were out of padded mailers. But I kept going. By the end of year 1, we did $412,000 in revenue. Profit? Barely $60K, but it was mine. Year 2. I got serious. I hired a brand strategist who helped me pivot Mindtrack from a cute notebook store to a full-on productivity lifestyle brand. We created courses, digital downloads, a daily habit tracker app that honestly sucked, but it got people talking, and even launched a podcast that climbed to number 12 in the self-help category on Apple Podcasts. We hit $1.3 million in revenue. I finally paid myself a real salary $70,000. Then came the lawsuit. A competitor claimed we copied their journal layout. They were bluffing, but their lawyers weren't. It cost me $24,000 to settle out of court. I had to recall 2 of our best-selling planners. That month, I cried in my car twice. Once in a Walmart parking lot, once in a Chick-fil-A drive-thru. I thought I was going to lose it all. But something weird happened. My community showed up for me. Customers sent in messages of support. One woman in Michigan bought 10 planners, just in case they disappear. A small YouTuber made a video about the journal company that almost got sued to death, and it racked up 1.1 million views. Orders spiked again. We bounced back. Year 3, I hired a COO and stepped back from operations. I started focusing on product development and brand storytelling. We launched a subscription box, Mindtrack Monthly, which included curated productivity tools, exclusive journals, and self-improvement mini-books. We hit 5,000 subscribers in 3 months. We crossed $2.7 million in revenue. That was the year Forbes emailed me. Apparently, someone nominated me for their 30 under 30 list. I made the cut. My mom printed it and put it in 3 separate frames around the house. I still don't think she understands what I actually do. Year 4, we were on autopilot, which meant I got bored. So I launched a second business. This one was a physical co-working space called The Greenhouse, a wellness-oriented work hub with daylight lamps, yoga mats in the corners, free kombucha, and no email checking between 10 a.m. and noon. A rule that made Type A folks rage quit their memberships within a week. It was profitable in 6 months. Now it's year 5. Mindtrack is still going strong, though I've stepped back and handed the reins to my COO. The Greenhouse has 3 locations. I'm building something new. An AI-powered personal assistant app that integrates with your planner and calendar and sends you memes when you finish tasks. I raised $750,000 in pre-seed funding last month. But more than anything, I just don't hate Mondays anymore. In fact, sometimes I wake up and forget what day it is. That's how I know I made it. Not because of the money, the followers, or the Forbes thing, but because that Sunday night dread is gone. I replaced it with curiosity, with building, with choosing. If there's a takeaway here, it's this: you don't need to have a world-changing idea to escape the life you hate. Sometimes a $15 notebook and a tweet are enough. Just don't wait until a panic attack in a Staples to find out. I had always been the kind of person who wanted more from life. Growing up in a small town where everyone knew everyone, I always felt like I was destined for something bigger. My parents were hard-working middle-class folks, but they never seemed to get ahead. They'd talk about their dreams and what they wanted to do, but somehow those dreams always stayed in the realm of someday. I promised myself I would break that cycle. When I was 20, I moved to the city to chase those big dreams. I had no concrete plan, no connections, and certainly no money. But what I did have was the drive to figure it out. I knew that if I could just get my foot in the door somewhere, I could make something happen. The first few years were tough. I worked as a barista in a downtown coffee shop, scraping by with a few dollars here and there. But I'd often find myself watching the business owners around me and wondering how they got to where they were. What did they know that I didn't? Then one day, I overheard a conversation between two regulars at the cafe. They were talking about investing in a new startup. I didn't understand everything they were saying, but I knew it was something important. After they left, I Googled startups and got lost in the world of tech blogs, business articles, and success stories. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the route I could take to get out of the grind and build something of my own. I started diving into entrepreneurship books, listening to podcasts, and reading about everything I could find on launching a business. But I quickly realized that there was a big difference between knowing about starting a business and actually doing it. The more I learned, the more I realized how little I knew. Despite the uncertainty, I decided to take the plunge. I didn't have much in terms of savings, but I had an idea. It came to me when I was working at the coffee shop. A lot of people came in and asked for specific orders, not just coffee, but coffee with almond milk, or a double shot of espresso, or some other customization. It hit me. Why not create a coffee subscription service where people could get high-quality, customizable coffee delivered straight to their door? People love their coffee, but they hate the hassle of going to the store. I didn't have much capital, so I started small. I found a local coffee roaster who was willing to work with me, and I set up a website. I spent every spare moment researching how to market a business online. It was a struggle at first. I didn't know how to get people's attention, and the first few months were rough. But then, something clicked. I started creating content around coffee culture, shared stories from coffee farmers, and built an online community. The breakthrough moment came when I posted a video on Instagram about the journey of sourcing coffee beans from a small farm in Colombia. It went viral, not in the sense of millions of views, but it reached the right people. Influencers in the coffee world started reaching out, asking for collaborations. Slowly, my following grew. At this point, the business was doing well enough that I could afford to hire a small team. I brought on a marketing specialist and a customer service rep. We expanded our offerings and introduced a subscription model that allowed customers to personalize their coffee orders. It was exciting to see it grow, but there was also the constant pressure of making sure we could keep up with demand. Things were starting to take off, but the journey was far from smooth. Around a year into the business, I got a call from a major distributor who wanted to partner with us. On the surface, it seemed like a dream come true. The distributor was well established, and they could help us reach a wider audience. But after some careful consideration, I realized that this partnership would require us to change our whole business model. We'd lose some of the personalized touch that had made us so successful in the first place. I spent weeks agonizing over it, weighing the pros and cons. Ultimately, I decided to turn down the deal. It wasn't easy, in fact. It felt like a massive risk. But I knew in my gut that if we compromised on our values, we might lose what made us unique. That decision was one of the toughest I've ever made, but looking back, I'm proud of it. We continued growing, but we did it on our own terms. Over the next couple of years, we expanded into new markets and even launched our own branded coffee line. It felt surreal to see our logo in local cafes and grocery stores. But success didn't come without its challenges. One of the hardest moments was when a competitor launched a similar service with a much larger budget. They had the resources to run massive ad campaigns, and for a while, it seemed like they were everywhere. I'll admit, it stung. I felt like I was back at square one, but I didn't give up. I doubled down on our community-building efforts, created even more personalized experiences for our customers, and focused on quality over quantity. It paid off. Our loyal customers appreciated that we stayed true to our roots. They didn't want a generic coffee brand. They wanted something authentic, something they could connect with. In the end, our brand became synonymous with quality and authenticity. We weren't the biggest, but we were one of the most respected. I've learned so many valuable lessons over the years, some hard, some rewarding, but all of them have shaped who I am today. The key to success is resilience. There's no straight path, no guaranteed formula. There will be failures, and there will be moments where you question everything. But if you keep pushing forward, if you stay true to your values, and if you build something that people truly care about, you'll make it. Looking back, I'm proud of how far we've come. I don't have millions in the bank, but I've built something that matters. I've created jobs, I've impacted lives, and I've proven to myself that hard work and passion can lead to something great. And the best part? I'm just getting started. I was 24 when I made the bold decision to drop out of college. It wasn't an easy choice. In fact, it was the hardest thing I had ever done. But it felt like the right one, the only one. I'd always been someone who loved learning, but I wasn't sure that traditional education was going to get me to where I wanted to be in life. So, I packed up my stuff and left, much to the disappointment of my parents. They didn't understand it at first, and I think it scared them. After all, society tells you that getting a degree is the golden ticket to success. But I had bigger plans. At the time, I had this burning idea in my head. I wanted to start a business. The specifics of it weren't clear yet, but I had a sense that technology and the internet were the future. I spent countless hours reading articles, watching YouTube videos, and attending networking events. At first, it was overwhelming. Everyone around me was in school, working regular jobs, building their futures the safe way. Meanwhile, I was on my own, trying to carve out my path. My first business attempt was a complete disaster. I decided to start a digital marketing agency. I figured I could help small businesses with their online presence, build websites, manage social media, and run ads. I created a website, pitched my services to local businesses, and got a few clients. I thought I had it all figured out. But the reality hit hard. I had no idea what I was doing. I couldn't handle the technical side of things, and worse, I had no clue how to scale the business. I was burnt out, stressed, and barely making any money. I ended up closing that business after just 6 months. It felt like a huge failure. I had sunk all my savings into it, and I didn't have a plan B. For a while, I questioned my decision to drop out of school. Was I just wasting time? Maybe I should go back, get my degree, and follow the conventional path. But then, something inside me pushed me to try again. I wasn't going to give up just yet. I spent the next year working odd jobs, living with friends, and learning from my mistakes. I studied everything I could about entrepreneurship, marketing, and the startup world. I listened to podcasts, read books, and networked with anyone who would talk to me. Slowly, I started to feel like I was figuring it out. One day, while browsing Reddit, I came across a post about an emerging trend in e-commerce, dropshipping. I had heard of it before, but this time something clicked. I started researching like crazy. I spent the next few months building an online store using Shopify. I was selling generic products at first, nothing special. I made a few sales here and there, but it wasn't enough to quit my day job. Still, I was learning. I was testing different ads, tweaking my website, trying to understand what people actually wanted to buy. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. And that's when things started to change. One night, I stumbled upon a product that I thought could be a game changer. It was a unique, customizable phone case that allowed customers to design their own patterns. It wasn't something you could find in regular stores, and I saw potential in it. I started running Facebook ads for it, targeting people who loved personalizing their belongings. The first few sales came in slowly, but then the floodgates opened. People loved it. I went all in on this product. I stopped everything else, focused solely on the phone case business, and poured all my energy into it. I learned how to improve my ad targeting, optimize my website for conversions, and provide exceptional customer service. I invested in influencer marketing, sending free cases to Instagram influencers with large followings. The response was overwhelming. Sales skyrocketed, and I finally saw the results I had been dreaming about. By the time I was 26, my online store was generating more revenue than I had ever imagined. I was making enough money to live comfortably and reinvest into the business. But I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to scale further. I hired a team, outsourced tasks, and focused on growing the brand. We expanded into other product lines like custom t-shirts and accessories and built a loyal customer base. Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. The road was anything but easy, and there were times when I wanted to quit. I had moments where I doubted myself, felt like a failure, and questioned whether entrepreneurship was worth it. But each time I hit a wall, I reminded myself that this was my journey, my dream, and that success wasn't going to come from playing it safe. Now, at 28, I've sold my e-commerce business for a nice seven-figure sum. It was a bittersweet decision, but I felt it was time to move on to the next challenge. I'm currently working on a new tech startup focused on AI solutions for small businesses. It's exciting, and I feel like I'm only just scratching the surface of what's possible. To anyone reading this, especially if you're feeling lost or unsure about your path, I want to say this. Entrepreneurship is not easy, but it is incredibly rewarding. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to follow a specific path to be successful. Your journey is your own. Take risks, learn from your mistakes, and most importantly, keep going. You'll get there. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. As I reflect on my journey, I realize the most important thing I've learned is that success is built on persistence. It's about staying committed, even when things are tough. I could have given up after my first failure, but I didn't. I kept learning, kept adapting, and kept pushing forward. If you're out there, struggling and wondering if it's all worth it, remember that every step, good or bad, is part of the process. Keep going, and you might just surprise yourself. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.